start with introducing who you are and what I've invited you here to talk about.
Sweet. So, I am Tanith Broom. Hello. And I'm here to talk about Hanukkah.
Woohoo!
And I'm Jewish. So that's maybe the best person to, well, I'm not like the Jewish, if you will. But like, yeah, I'm a person, I guess, who can talk about Hanukkah in some way, shape, or form. So,
yes, I wanted to talk about this holiday in my ongoing series about different holidays, spend the holiday with Holliedazzle, but not being a Jewish person, I didn't feel like I was any kind of authority to speak on it or to just regurgitate any articles or things I could read about it, but to actually hear from a person of the faith and the tradition.
Sweet. So thank
the
you.
best way to do it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tanith is a very good friend of mine, and we've known each other through a lot of different things in our
Life.
respective worlds. Charities and performance and
Bodies.
life, friends, all that.
Yeah. All of the things. So, I think a really great way to start off our conversation is actually lighting my menorah, which I have not yet lit on this 7th night of Hanukkah.
Oh, look.
Yeah.
Is that what we're seeing here? In front of us?
Yes. So this is my menorah. Moop. There's the money shot. Moop.
There it is. It's beautiful.
Yep. So this is my Hanukkah. There is a so menorah is just the term for lamp in Judaism, and so like for example, this is also a menorah, but if you'll notice, it only has 7 like places to put a candle in this candelabra, where this one has 9, because, and this is also a very valid menorah in Judaism. So,
not the specific Hanukkah.
yeah, and in like on your Hanukkah or Hanukkah menorah, you have a special candle. This is called the shumash. It's the candle that you use to light all of the other candles with, and it's the first one you light before you light any of the candles for the night. And before you just go off lighting all the candles, we have a blessing, also a bracha, a blessing or a bracha. And that blessing is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam she'asi nisim la'avotenu bayamim hayhem bizman hazeh. Don't come for me because my Hebrew is awful.
Now I know Adonai. That's the word for God.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So, the translation of what I just said is, hold on, let me get through this. And you don't ever blow out candles in Judaism. That is like a no-no. It doesn't matter if they are your Shabbat or Shabbos candles, or your Hanukkah candles. But at this point in Hanukkah, because they're all, like, you get all this, they go so fast. But again, yeah. The translation of what I said is, Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, which is the Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam.
I hear that one a lot in different Jewish, like,
oh,
that's
yeah.
like the opening lines of a lot of prayers.
Oh, yeah. That is the, like, if you learn a sentence in Judaism, it is the beginning of a bracha, like a blessing. Yep. So blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has performed miracles for our forefathers in those days at this time. The third blessed, that was the translation of the second one. So, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to kindle the Hanukkah light. And then it's Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who performed miracles for our forefathers in those days at this time. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
So you said one upon lighting the shamash.
Yep.
And then the other as you lit for the other candles.
Yep.
And you light a certain direction, is that right too?
Yep. So we light the way that we read in Hebrew. So we light from right to left.
Gotcha.
Which might be reversed on this camera, I don't know.
Yeah, yes. When you're looking at your menorah, it's like you're looking at a book.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And so you light from right to left, and you never blow them out. That is a hard stop.
Let them do their thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So lighting the menorah is one way it's celebrated.
Absolutely.
I guess we should probably, before we even talk about how it's celebrated, like what is the story of Hanukkah? We know it's the festival of lights, the miracle of light.
Yeah.
What happened?
So there are two ways to tell this story. One is the sanitized version that has come about since the middle of the 19th century, the middle of the 1800s.
Okay.
And then there is the Grimm's fairy tale original version, which is kind of dark. Oddly enough, right? So the history of Hanukkah is based on the tale of the Maccabees, which oddly enough isn't even in the Torah. It's not a part of our Torah. We find it in another holy text that the Jews follow, and it's essentially a whole bunch of rabbis talking to each other throughout history, and they talk about the Maccabees and this history. So what happened was a very, very long time ago, about 150 BC, the land of Judea, Israel, Palestine, was conquered by a man named Antiochus. So he was a king, he was a ruler, and he was actually pretty cool. He defeated Ptolemy, the insert number here, I can't remember exactly. Don't kill me, I'm not a historian. But he beat the Ptolemaic dynasty out of Judea. And he was Antiochus III, was pretty cool. He was absolutely all about religious freedom. Didn't really bother anybody. Didn't bother the Jews. Didn't bother anybody else living there. He was cool. His kid, though, was not cool, and that was Antiochus IV. And he chose to, one, tax the Jews for a war he lost against the Romans elsewhere. Nobody likes that. But two, forced assimilation, and like encouraged the Jews to be like, and not just encourage, but forced the Jewish people to not observe their own religion. They forced them to eat pork. All of these things, kind of
against the law.
Yeah.
To practice their religion.
Yeah. So it was kind of a big deal. Kind of bad.
Persecution.
Yeah. It was a thing, right? Like nobody likes that. Except that so this is where it gets interesting. So some Jews actually were fine assimilating, and had been like, it's never been a good day for a Jew to be super different in all of these different lands and all of these different rulers. Like, we don't really care. Like, we'll worship an idol a little bit. Like, sure, whatever. And so you see, there was really a divide there. But the Maccabees were, some folks say, fighting for liberation, fighting for, Jewishness and Jewish freedom. Others are, lean towards they were religious zealots. And there was actually, in the midst of all of this, essentially like a Jewish civil war, where those who were fine assimilating fought back against the Maccabees, and fought violently. It was really a violent civil war. But the Maccabees took up arms. They went to the temple, like the temple, and it was the second temple. It wasn't King Solomon's temple. Went to the second temple after it obviously had been rebuilt and everybody was worshiping, etc. And brutally beat Antiochus and his folks out of the temple. And within a couple of years had actually gotten Antiochus and all of these folks and all of his folks out of Judea and liberated Judea for the Jews. And what we think Hanukkah is actually a celebration of a different holiday, like a redo, since they were incapable of celebrating Sukkot, which comes right after Yom Kippur. It's the next holiday. It's a super fun holiday.
It's a harvest festival.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
and
when they build the thing outside.
Yeah, we build sukkah outside, and you have to eat in it, and it has specific parameters.
Like, live in them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super fun. Like, to go outside and eat under the stars, and, you know, you leave sides open so that your neighbors come and you have togetherness.
Palm leaves?
Yep.
Is that right, that they put on the top? Gotcha.
Space far enough apart so that you can see the stars is the parameters.
I think they were celebrating that in the first, or trying to celebrate that in the first Hanukkah?
Yep. And so that holiday is also 8 days. And so they're in the temple, and, you know, they've only got enough oil to last one day, one night. And the miracle is that it lasted 8 nights. The rabbis throughout history argue whether or not it's the oil would empty and it would refill for the next day, or if it just burned entirely for the 8 days and there was never a volume change, right? Like and so that's the holiday of Hanukkah. It got sanitized during the middle of the 1800s, towards like the early part of the 1900s to. It's the celebration of the liberation of Judea by Judah Maccabee and the Maccabees, right? And we celebrate it by burning these candles, etc. And being together, eating fried food, playing games, dreidel, which is a game of chance, and really just, you know, being with one another and celebrating that joy. But there was actually a giant period of time where Jews really didn't celebrate Hanukkah because of all of the stigma, and there was still like some leftover feelings about the fact that it was actually a civil war between the Jews. So that's been that original story and that history has definitely been tamped down, which, you know, happens over the course of history and over the course of time. But
things are messy and complicated, and
yeah, it's a lot easier to tell a happy, pretty story. And when Jews were, and Hanukkah, the way we celebrate it now, is definitely an American Jewish tradition. But American Jewish tradition is some of the longest lasting, especially because of the Holocaust. So our traditions become everybody else's traditions in certain ways. Like Jews in Israel and Jews around the diaspora also celebrate Hanukkah in the same way that American Jews do. For the most part, like as a fun holiday, as a joyous holiday where we light the lights and we're with each other and we give presents, etc. Present giving wasn't a thing really for Hanukkah for the most part, and even when it reemerged into Jewish tradition in the middle of the 1800s, early 1900s, you'd give. It was traditional for grandparents to give their grandchildren money, to give them gelt, right? Which has sustained, like the idea of giving gelts has sustained itself through the idea of Hanukkah gelt, which is chocolate coins that you use to essentially bet with when you're doing dreidel.
Yeah. With dreidel, I was doing a little bit of reading, and also with my history. My viewers on my channel might not know that I was a Messianic Jew for a time, which is not something I'm incredibly proud of.
Hey.
As of what I know about that faith is a little appropriative and a little very white people-y. It's pretty much like Christians LARPing Judaism. But I did manage to pick up a few correct things from it, and I think that the dreidel story being a cover for practicing their faith or talking or stepping together, and then when the Romans would come by, they'd be like, oh, just kidding, we're gambling. You like gambling, right? We're gambling.
Yeah, that's exactly.
We're not studying or talking about Jew stuff. Nope.
Nope.
Not us. We're gambling. They was like playing dice, kind of.
Yeah. So that's exactly what it is. And it came down through time as like a game, instead of like a game that adults would play to talk about the Torah as they were studying, but a game for children. So, yeah, that's the way that folks view Hanukkah as American or as Jewish Christmas is kind of a misnomer, right? Like, Hanukkah is actually one of our most insignificant holidays. It's one of our most minor holidays. Is it super fun? Absolutely. Like, is it absolutely Instagrammable? 10 out of 10. Like, it's a beautiful holiday.
More cultural holiday than a religious, maybe?
I think a lot of the traditions...
Like a historical event?
I think... So, there is precedent within one of the other texts that we use and study for lighting a menorah for Hanukkah to be a mitzvah. So something that we're supposed to do, that God wants us to do.
A mitzvah is a commandment.
Yep.
Is that kind of the equivalent?
Yep. So one of the things we're supposed to do is to light these lights. Everything else is society and tradition, etc. All of these things.
Sure.
And one of the reasons why Jews celebrate Hanukkah the way we do now is because at the turn of the century, as all of these immigrant Jews were coming into the United States, they're surrounded by Christians and Christianity, as much as we are now. There was some anxiety about essentially like the children of these immigrants leaving Judaism for Christmas, like for Christianity. Yeah. And especially if you go to, like, if you've ever been in New York around Christmas time, it is magical, and it has been that way for a long time. And, you know, they see their friends and their neighbors that, like, they're meeting at school, you know, celebrating Christmas and having, you know, it's kind of an attractive holiday. You got all these songs, you've got all, like, it's got a vibe. And there were groups of Reform Jews in Ohio that kind of started it almost simultaneously as a number of Reform, conservative, and Orthodox Jews kind of started leaning into it and leaning into Hanukkah as sort of an equivalent, like something we can do and celebrate to bring joy and sure, let's do presents. Like, that sounds great. To keep Jews in Judaism. So
that's something that is not uncommon in religions, being what Christians did with Saturnalia.
Yeah.
And some of the pagan traditions where they were like, oh, you like to have a festival in the winter?
Great.
Well, we can still do that, and you can still be a Christian, and you can still put greens in your house. The holly is about Christ, and the ivy is about Mary.
Yep.
Boom, done.
Yeah. And that was funny enough, like the whole idea of this civil war, like for or against assimilation, the idea of bringing in presents and like doing these things to make children, like to prevent Jews leaving the religion. It's a form of assimilation, you know, and that was also another thing.
They were fighting against.
Yeah. And that was also another thing, was like, also we have presents, like, look how American we are. Like, so it was a way to display Americanness versus being Jewish, like being Jewish and being other.
Sure.
Like, oh, look, we have something similar.
Kind of just some survival mechanisms that come, you know, it's probably a hard thing to navigate, you know, from a moral and spiritual place for Jewish people, but it's a very understandable phenomenon when you're the underdog or the less represented people. Like, of course, that's what
fit in.
Yeah, exactly. That happens. Western countries especially, they can put a lot of pressure on you when you look or seem different.
Yeah. So, I mean,
absolutely.
But I think the way that we celebrate Hanukkah now is still beautiful. And it's just like embracing you know, aside from the fact that, yes, it was built on like, the holiday is about essentially a civil war, and then also, but it's also about, like, the victory of the Jewish people against a much larger power. Because Antiochus was part of the Macedonian Empire. Like, he was the leader of the Macedonian Empire, and he and his buddies, you know, beat them out of Judea and were capable, like, Judea was finally ruled by Jews again. So
yeah, that's a big deal, getting the kind of the conquerors out.
Yeah. So, and especially at that time, like, and you know, it's overcoming. It's about fighting against. It's all, you know, despite minus the whole, you know, Civil War thing. Like, it's still about fighting injustice. Like, it was an injustice to force the Jews to assimilate and force them to assimilate. You eat pork. You worship multiple gods. We're going to perform ceremonies in your temple, in your most sacred place.
One of the things I heard, they were re-sanctifying the temple.
Yeah.
That's what the burning of the oil was about. Like,
yeah, to consistently burn that oil and re-celebrate that holiday. Like, bring God, invite God back. Yeah, invite God back into the Holy of Holies, which is the innermost sanctum of the temple.
They did some pretty nasty things to sacred places.
Yeah.
Conquerors are known for doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
Jerks.
What's the way you can get to somebody in the rudest, meanest, most demoralizing way?
Yeah, right to the heart.
Yeah. Just get to their sacred landmarks and let's ruin them.
Yeah, exactly. But that does bring, like, that means we also get a holiday filled with oil. And, you know, one of the ways Jews love symbolism in ways that I think not necessarily all religions do or understand. Like, every part has a meaning, and every meaning can be unraveled in so many different ways.
I think that's a really attractive part of it for me.
Yeah.
That I love metaphor.
We got boatloads.
I love the metaphor and the symbolism of just, it seemed like everything
in
Judaism had like 5 meanings.
Layers.
And you could and none of them were wrong or none of them were right, and you could find the one that spoke to you, and that's.
Oh yeah.
I always thought that there was the one faith that I ever practiced that I felt was sacred when I was practicing it.
I mean, yeah, we have a saying in Judaism that God is in the mundane. So everything can have a sacredness and a meaning, and you can take that meaning and pull it all the way through. Like, this is a holiday of lights. It was about a miracle of oil, and in a fun, foodie way. Like, now that miracle of oil means you get to eat latkes and sufganiyot, which are jelly donuts. And latkes are for Hanukkah are of the tradition of the Ashkenazi Jews or the Eastern European Jews. Sufganiyot are of the Mediterranean, Middle Eastern Jews. But lots of folks eat both.
Yeah.
And so you pull that all the way through, because that oil was important, right? So, how else do you display that importance? You fry stuff. That's one way that you can utilize the oil to bring it through.
Honoring that miracle substance.
Yeah. And I mean, it is a miracle.
Is the food one of your favorite parts of the celebration? Absolutely.
And there are probably Jews who are going to come for me because one of my favorite things to do, there's always the purists, right? There's always debate about foods, and especially in Judaism, people Jewish culture is to talk about how the way that you do something is better and how you don't mess with it.
The War of the Brisket, right?
Yeah, War of the Brisket. You can compare it to how folks do their how Southerners fight over whether or not they should be sweet or savory grits. Same idea.
All the cultures.
All of them. So, I love to make latkes the way that they are supposed to be made. Shredded potatoes, shredded onion, and you deep fry them in oil you mix it with egg and matzah, and you deep fry it in oil, and those are traditional latkes. I love to mess with that. This Hanukkah, I have made regular latkes. I have made a half potato, half sweet potato with onion in it mixture. I have made a potato, shredded apple, obviously onion, and filled with Gruyere, stuffed with Gruyere latke. Yeah. And that one, 10 out of 10. Phenomenal.
That was the Juicy Lucy latke?
That was my Juicy Lucy latke. And it was so good. You have to pretty much, like, yeah, you can't make, normally when you're making latkes, because you're making so many of them generally at a time, you make them and you put them in the oven. Best results for the Juicy Lucy latke. Bring whoever you're eating them with into the kitchen and eat them literally as they're coming out of the pan, because they come, you can...
Yeah, then they like the cheese pull and the...
Yeah, versus like...
Yeah, almost like a mozzarella stick kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you put them in the oven... Yeah. If you put them in the oven, the cheese kind of starts to melt into the surrounding tissue, if you will. And it was still...
I've had different stuffed potato things before, and they are always incredible, so I know that is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, either way, they're amazing, but it's super great when they're super fresh and hot. And you can pull it all apart, and it's melty and ooey and gooey.
So does your family have any special traditions that are maybe not what every family does? Is there certain regional things? Because you're originally from the East Coast. Yeah,
well, so the funny thing is both my parents are from here. So I spent the majority of my life on the East Coast. Okay. So Hanukkah definitely looks different in every family. And like in my family, because we were poor, Hanukkah was always about socks, sweaters, and school supplies, which makes the brand new Hanukkah classic, because we don't have very many Hanukkah songs, right? Even though Jews wrote them like so many good Christmas songs.
Right.
Come on, what are you doing? Like, help us out. David Diggs did us the solid. Thank you, David. That is a Jew I would like to marry. Just kidding. I got a Goyance. It's fine. But he, if you haven't heard it already this year, I'm absolutely obsessed. It's Puppy for Hanukkah. I absolutely identify with that song because he talks about socks, talks about sweaters, like...
Yeah, I've heard it's very practical gift giving.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, and then like you get one, like especially in poor families, you get one special gift. I know like there are definitely some rich kids who like get to ball out for 8 nights, and that's lovely. But that is, despite some rumors, that's not the majority of Jews. Most Jews are poor and working class. Like, so yeah, we get lots of socks, we get school supplies, we get sweaters, we get umbrellas. You know, like we get very, very practical gifts, and I definitely keep up that tradition even as an adult. Matt got lots of socks, and he gave me socks for Hanukkah.
Nice.
But I mean, in my family, it's just been about getting together, spending time with one another, eating boatloads of fried food, and just relaxing. Because most of the time, especially because it's 7 nights, right? We spend so much time busy. And even during Hanukkah, yeah, and the sun goes down super early. Most of the time, folks light their candles right after sundown. I have a weird thing where I like to light mine at about 7 o'clock, just because I've got stuff going on. But that means that for me, at 7 p.m., everything stops, and you get to take a breath. You aren't trying to run around, do laundry, whatever. You spend time doing whatever you're doing with whoever you're doing it with. So you really get the chance to stop and sit down and wind down and relax and spend time with each other and really get to enjoy that company.
Share your light with the world.
Yeah, share your time. Yeah, and I mean, you know, some very common Hanukkah traditions are, you know, playing dreidel and singing songs. Dreidel, 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 I made you out of clay. Especially, that one's the best when you've got some nieces, nephews, or kids around, because they love it, and they're great singers, and it's cute. So
yeah, all of us could kids are good singers. I love that about little kids.
Yeah.
You can look into a whole classroom and be like, who here's a great singer? Everybody's hands go up.
Yeah.
That's confidence. I just want to just bottle it up.
Put it in my pocket. Like, I'd love to know, little Tan, like, what were you up to? Yeah.
Keep that in.
Yeah. So.
I think we've covered all of the things I had questions on or wanted to know and hear it straight from a source that I know and trust.
Thank goodness.
Yes. And is there anything else that you want to say about Hanukkah, about faith, about this time of year, about, whatever comes.
Oh man, we could be here for like 15 hours. Because I really.
Oh no, I just asked the Jewish girl. I gave her an open stage.
You're right.
She's a talker.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. So I think one thing I want people to know is Hanukkah isn't Jewish Christmas. Hanukkah is Hanukkah. Please don't tell your Jewish friends, or say the phrase, Jewish Christmas to your Jewish friends, because we're not Christians. It's not Christmas. It's about something completely different. We spend every single day, especially if you aren't in a place where there's lots of Jewish folks, combating consistent misinformation and there is a barrage of Christianity thrown at us all the time, and judgments made about us and our religion, and our practices and who we are and what we think and what we believe. And if you meet one Jew, you know one Jew. Right. And we all have differences of opinion. There's conservative Jews. There's very liberal Jews. There's super liberal Jews. There's trans Jews. There's not trans Jews. There's we're all different. And there's Orthodox Jews. We're all different. Our practices are different. But also just ask. Most of the time we're happy to talk about what we think and what we believe and how we do it. Each Jew is individual. And their traditions and practices are what they are. We do have a lot of commonality, and we have a lot of agreements on a lot of different things. And one of those things, are the depth and the beauty of our traditions. We can all agree that we have beautiful traditions. We've had, 57, 70, God, oh man. The Jewish year is 57, 70 something, right? I'm the worst. But we've had almost 6,000 years to be together and come up with ideas and argue with each other and deepen the ways that we practice and celebrate our religion and the people that we are. And, we have all of that history and depth behind us. We love talking about it. So ask. And I think that's maybe the other thing, is that there are a lot of preconceived notions about Jews and Judaism in general. And some of those are wrong. Judaism is a beautiful, beautiful faith with rich traditions, rich history. I could talk all day about it. You want to know about Judaism? Please give me a buzz. I could...
Well, I'll have to have you back for some of the other...
super fun holidays. Oh my God.
There's a lot.
Yeah, we've got Purim, which is a feminist Jewish Halloween where you are obligated to be drunk, and then you get together with everybody and you do essentially a midnight Rocky Horror showing, listening of the story of Esther. Literally, you stomp on the ground and make noise at certain parts when certain names are mentioned. And yeah, you have a ball. Passover is a drinking game, in my humble opinion, about the story of the Exodus.
Did you just throw down that Jews invented the shadow cast?
Pretty much, yeah.
I love it.
It's fun. And right, we have a lot of feminists and celebrate, our number one commandment, right? Our number one mitzvah is to repair the world. And that means to repair injustice where you see it, to be a good steward of this earth, which is not mine, to take care of your neighbor and to take care of those around you. And if nothing else, I guess Hanukkah is one example of that. to fight against things that you see as injustice and that you know are not right. It's an embodiment of that principle of Tikkun Olam, repair the world, right? So, talk to your Jewish friends, ask them questions.
Will do. We'll keep doing it. We'll keep meeting and we'll keep talking about some more Jewish festivals and traditions and holidays and all the good stuff. And I'll be happy to have you back. And
that would be wonderful.
Awesome. Will do. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me tonight. I really appreciate all your time and technical expertise and pulling this together for me.
We'll figure it out.
And yeah, for sharing your life with us.
Thank you
so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.